Hello, guys, and welcome to today's tropical update. And we're gonna call this segment "Tropics Around the World." So this is the first episode of that. I'm probably gonna do these every other day until Fred becomes a threat to land. So the next 3 to 4 days will probably be every other day or so. So here we go. This is the Joint Typhoon Warning Center calls Gabrielle a subtropical cyclone. But in reality, Gabrielle is definitely an extratropical cyclone. And these are the particulars. We're not going to look in the models for either this or the other system here, Dingani. We're not gonna look at models for those. So extratropical Gabrielle is located at 36.2 south, 176.1 east. Maximum sustained winds are at 50 knots or 60 miles per hour. We got a minimal central pressure of 985 millibars. So let's take a look at the infrared here, and it definitely looks like it's trying to spin out. A lot of this convection is trying to make its way off of western New Zealand here, and the last couple of days, New Zealand has been getting wrecked with tons of heavy rain. They got flooding going on over there, and they just got hit with a major flooding event in late January. So this is only worsened the situation in New Zealand, and this convection should get out of here within the next 12 to 18 hours, maybe 24 at tops. So hopefully we will be able to get them dried out, and hopefully we don't have to worry about any post or extratropical cyclones coming here for the foreseeable future. All right, so that is Gabrielle. Now we're going to talk about Cyclone Dingani. It had a really good run here. It overperformed what people expected out of it. I think officially MFR had it at 100 miles per hour. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And the overperformance of Dingani is going to help influence Cyclone Freddy. Freddy. Well, we got to get the blunder in there somewhere, right? But anyways, Dingani should influence the path of Freddy, as it's going to enhance the subtropical ridge in this area. So that's not a good look for the people of Madagascar and the islands east of it, like La Reunion, all that. So Dingani should stay away from any islands, and it's gonna peter out here in the next. Let's take a look at this. It should peter out here in the next 3.5 days or so. All right, so now we're here. We're gonna go over here to Invest 91P first, and this is definitely monsoonal in nature here, as you can see by the convection here, and it's you're getting flooding rains here in northern Australia. That is for sure. And let's take a look at the particulars here. It is located at 13.3 south, 137.4 east. Maximum sustained winds are at 25 knots or 30 miles per hour. We got a minimal central pressure of 998 millibars. So let's take a look at the IR here to see what it's doing here. It's trying to spin up. It's definitely discombobulated all over the place. We got probably flooding rains going on here in this western blob. We probably got some probably flooding going on here in this eastern lobe too. So it's going to primarily be a flooding event for Australia. It may turn into a tropical cyclone, but that is yet to be seen. At least in BOM standards, this may not make it to a tropical cyclone, but you might get a cyclone out of a Joint Typhoon Warning Center now. So that's something we're going to have to pay attention to going forward. All right, so here is the GFS. This was initialized at 12Z today. And as you can see, we got a 994 millibar low pressure system here, just on the coast here of this northern landmass. So we're gonna go out in time. It looks like 994. It's pretty much peak 993 actually. So this is 54 hours out. Can we do a probably need a bigger box than that, but we'll see what the sheer and relative humidity is honestly not that bad as we head out through the 54-hour mark. So uh, I think it's because it's monsoonal in nature. It's probably not going to get together quick enough to actually be too big of a wind event. But definitely look out for flash flooding going forward in the future of Australia here. So let's go out 120. Obviously, it's already on. We're going to take a look at total accumulated precipitation here. And yep, definitely some flooding rains here. Some of these spots can pick up 225 to 350 millimeters of rain here. So, yes, this is definitely going to be a flood threat for some. And, obviously, we've seen with New Zealand just how bad flooding can be. And now we're going to be seeing it here in Australia. It's just the southern hemisphere has come to play. That's all I can say. It's starting to overperform, and I take a bet on some of that being for the fact that La Nina is dying. So we might be getting some influences from that, and some other factors that go into that. So let's take a look at the ECMWF. We are initializing at 998 millibars, so this is the same as ATCF. So let's go out into the future. It stays relatively broad here, but it's definitely going to be a rainmaker for sure. So it goes in to the southwest here, and then obviously because this only goes out about 90 hours, that's all we can really go to. So let's take a look at the precipitation here. And the totals here for the ECMWF aren't as extreme as GFS. There are some isolated amounts of 225 to say 300 millimeters of rain in some locations. So ECMF, even though this is still going to probably cause some flooding rains here, ECMWF seems to be the best case so far. So let's take a look at the CMC. This is the same initialization, 998 millibars here. So we're going to go out in time. It stays broad, just like every other model, and it goes inland around 66 or so hours. We peak it out at 996, but I don't know. This is definitely probably not a tropical cyclone. This is probably it's broad. It's very broad. So we're gonna go out 120 hours, and as you can see, the moisture from the system just meanders around a bit. So that's definitely not a good look. So let's take a look at the precipitation here, and it looks like the CMC and the GFS agree on tons of rain. So we're looking at anywhere from again 200 to maybe 400 millimeters of rain in some locations. So we designate these systems to get more information. Whether it be tropical depression, invest, tropical storm, hurricane. It's all just a designation to get more information. What matters is what those systems do and what impacts they bring that gives them their reputation, not not the category, not the wind speed, not the pressure, but the impacts. So it's just the overall impacts. So obviously that does include the wind, the rain, the surge, the tornado threat. If there is some, yes, tornadoes can be a thing in tropical systems, and just all that kind of stuff. All right, so we're going to take a look at what is our main feature for this video, and that is Tropical Cyclone Freddy. So here we are, obviously it's located at 15.4 south, 94.6 east. Maximum winds are at 90 knots. I do believe that's 105 miles per hour. I got knots and miles per hour mixed up for days. So I think that's 105 miles per hour. Anyways, so the minimal central pressure is at 970 millibars. And here is what the Joint Typhoon Warning Center has for this system. And as you can see, we went down from I think we had a 115 knot peak for the second peak, which is 130 miles per hour. So obviously that has since weakened to 90 knots, but we are forecasted to have a third peak here, 110 knots here on the 16th, which I do believe is Tuesday. That's a Thursday. Yes, Thursday it should peak for the third time, and then it starts to weaken again. But I would not be too surprised if we see a fourth and even a fifth peak as we head out through the next week or so. This is going to be a long track system, guys. So we are going to be talking about Freddy for a very, very long time. So let's take a look at the IR presentation here. And as you can see, it is definitely getting sheared. So obviously the shear is going to abate sooner rather than later, which I think it should be starting tomorrow. And then this thing should start to ramp up again. We should try to see an eye clearing again at some point in the next couple of days. All right, so here is the GFS, which is initialized at 12Z, and as you see, there's Dingani here, and this is Freddy here. We're initialized at 971 millibars. So let's go out. 12. Okay, we got to refresh probably. Yep, we got to refresh. All right, we're gonna go out to 24 hours. We're still around the same pressure area here, 973 millibars. Let's take a look at the particulars. Yep, 15 knots of shear. So we're definitely screaming a little bit. The relative humidity is not so good either. 48 hours, we start to strengthen a little bit again, 963 millibars. 15 knots and 53% relative humidity. So it's protecting itself pretty good for some of those readings. 72 hours, we got 959 millibars, so we're strengthening. 14 knots shear and 52% relative humidity. And as you can see, the influence of Dingani is going to force this thing to go west. So here we are, 96 hours, 15 knots of shear and 57% relative humidity. So it's the particulars are staying in the so-so category. So and our final destination here is 120 hours, day 5, because we're anything past day 5, hell, anything past day 3 is considered can change significantly, right? So we got 18 knots of shear, but the relative humidity is starting to go up again. So we got 67% relative humidity. Now, there are some models, excuse me, there are some models here that take it towards Madagascar, but again, that's about 8, 9, 10 days out. So I will still monitor this for you guys as time goes on. So here is the ECMWF. This only goes out about 90 or so hours. And thankfully for this ECMWF, we can take a look at the particulars here. And they're pretty trash. 23 knots of shear and 47% relative humidity. That is an ouch. 24 hours, we got 975. 16 knots and 43%. 975. 17 knots, 45% relative humidity. So the European, it's looking kind of meh when it comes to the shear and relative humidity, but you can see that it's keeping itself together. So Obviously it's doing something right here to protect itself from those environments. 72 hours, 14 knots of shear, and 44% relative humidity. And then finally, hour 90, nothing has changed. 13 knots. Well, 13 knots is not so bad when it comes to shear, but near 50% relative humidity, that needs to go up a little bit. All right. So our final model here, we're looking at this CMC, aka the uh, the CMC. you know, sometimes I forget acronyms, even though it's right here on the top of the tab. So let's get on with it. There we go, 995 millibars, which it initializes it way too weak. So we're gonna go out in time. It doesn't really get under 990 until about 84 hours out. So I don't know what the CMC is seeing for this to initialize and stay weak for a while, but it should start to strengthen as it gets farther west. As you can see here, CMC, at least in my time frame, is peaking at 975 millibars here. So it does do some strengthening going forward. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to be doing these videos every other day probably. And we're going to call it Tropics Around the World. And like I said, when and if Freddy becomes a threat to Madagascar, I will be doing these video updates every single day, at least solely on Fred. So, because, and maybe 91 too, as that's going to be a flood threat to Australia. Anyways, I want to thank you guys for watching. Hey, you guys voted for this and you guys wanted to see it, so here we are. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one.